I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you guys to stay up until the end, just to hear you speak about one of the, I would say, hardest questions to answer nowadays. What does a successful ecosystem looks like? I'm actually going to steal some ideas that Juan shared with me this morning. And I will say that, obviously, the first element, the obvious one that we need for a successful ecosystem to thrive will be, yes, you guessed that already, founders. We need people to dream big, who dare to face impossible odds, and even though that they know that they have a 90% failure rate, they will still pour their heart and soul and most likely savings into building a company because that's what they were born to do. The second thing that we need is investors. And we like to think of ourselves, I'm an investor myself, and we like to think of ourselves as equally important to the founders, which, to be honest, they can be a founder without an investor, but they can't be investors without founders. The third point, this is also an obvious one, would be customers. Obviously, an investor and a founder, they need to find the right people to sell the right stuff to. And last but not least, and this will be the big elephant in the room, and possibly the controversial statement that is going to get me canceled today, especially in Europe, will be a regulatory environment that fosters innovation. Which, again, I have my very controversial thoughts on it because I come from the States and from Latin America, and we have a very different mindset. So I'm going to start with Antonio. Antonio.
Hello.
As the executive director of Startup Portugal, what are the key elements that have contributed to the success of Startup Portugal in fostering a vibrant startup ecosystem?
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you for listening. I would say that Startup Portugal comes from the ecosystem, comes from the field, from the necessity of having an aggregator to all the startup and entrepreneurial community in the country. So I would say that one of the success factors is to have one representative of all the stakeholders, not being partially dedicated to each or to another one, but representing all of them and translating their needs, all of them, to the public executive, to the governors, to the people who make the laws, in order for them to put outside new politics, new public policies, new measures, in order to benefit the whole ecosystem. So I would say that unlike other countries, like Spain, for instance, and France, Germany, several countries in Europe, they have different associations with different scopes, some regional, some vertical, some... I would say that maybe it's the wrong way to do it. You should have one representative that can speak to the field, that can be listened by the actors who are here, the main actors of the ecosystem, which are the founders, let's say it, and feel their pains, and then translate that into new measures and new initiatives that can be implemented to facilitate their lives.
That's a very interesting point, because actually I was speaking with Nacho about this point exactly. And yes, I'm feeling very inclined to think that a more cohesive ecosystem will be better for everyone. But I think Nacho has a different view on the matter, because obviously the Spanish ecosystem behaves in a different way.
Yes, thank you for being here. I'm very happy to be in South Summit again. Yes, from my point of view, I think that we need more kind of agents in order to facilitate the collaboration between the different actors of the ecosystem. Because in an ecosystem, we only not have the entrepreneurs and investors. We need corporates, we need public administrations, we need also accelerators, incubators, programs, and corporate innovations programs, of course. And yes, and we think that also we need something, maybe entities, maybe tech events, in order to join and mix this kind of actors. So in Valencia, now we have the BDS, is the international tech event. We have more than 12,000 people there, and it's a great opportunity to connect in 1 week this kind of actors. No? It's like South Summit maybe, or Web Summit, or 4 years from now, with different size, of course, and different goals. But it's really important to have these summits to connect and to be in the same place, the same days, the right people, no? Decision maker people in these kind of organizations, not only investors, not only entrepreneurs, but yes, more kind of actors.
Yes, I would say that events are essential, but I'm going to throw the ball to Juan, because I do think that financial institutions being more involved in the ecosystem could also help it growth. Do you think, Juan?
Sure. Well, hello everyone. Pleased to be here with you. How many of you are founders? Okay. So, well, I mean, our organization is dedicated to fostering innovation in Spain, and obviously we have a strong presence in the startup ecosystem. And we work on the main axes that we think are important to drive the ecosystem. If we look more than from a regional level at a national level, I would say that Spain is a mid-sized ecosystem already. And what we focus on is on providing transparency and information to all the stakeholders, to investors, to founders, and to media as well, on the health of the ecosystem. Information is very, very important. So I invite all of you to check our Startups Observatory. It's free. It's a free tool where you can check who is investing, in what phase, in what region, in what companies, sectors, and so on. So once you have this information, you realize that the health of the Spanish ecosystem is quite good in early stages. In everything that goes up to Series B, Series C, there's money. There's money, there are investors, there are agents bringing everyone together, there are founders, and the problem starts when you start looking for mega rounds. And this is something that is very typical for a mid-sized ecosystem. I'm sure it happens also in Portugal. It happens also in other ecosystems. You need to look outside. You need to look abroad for funds and for investors. If you look at the data in Spain, just up to this, I mean, last year, there were around 2,300 million euros invested in startups in Spain. The year before, it was 3,200. This year, we are mid-year, we are half of last year, so around 1,200. And if you deep dive into the data, the problem are mega rounds. So you only see 1, 2, maybe 4 mega rounds, more than 50 million happening per quarter in Spain. And that's I think, one of the key challenges that we have, because mega rounds foster or create scale-ups and unicorns. In Spain, we only have 18 unicorns so far. And unicorns are the ones that drive what you mentioned at the beginning, that create more founders, that create more investors, and basically every 7 to 10 years, you create a new cycle of people that come out of Job and Talent, Global, the usual suspects in Spain, and that create this virtuous cycle to make the ecosystem thrive in the next phase. So I would say that funds and investors and bigger tickets investors are very important, and also big companies that then fill fill the gap with the very early stage founders.
Funny story, I actually, most people will know what Juan is talking about because the media use this really hideous word that I hate. They call them mafias. We have the Rappi Mafia, the Global Mafia, the PayPal Mafia, but it's basically this. This is a virtuous cycle. They use this word because it sounds sexier, but it's just a bunch of nerds investing in other nerds, which, again, this is something that actually comes from trying to give back to the community. And just because you opened this very dangerous door, why do you think that these mega rounds aren't happening here in Spain? Because most funders that we know that are looking to raise these kinds of rounds, they have to travel outside of Spain and speak to these really mega funds like Sequoia and SoftBank and, you know, the usual suspects.
I mean, I don't think it's a problem only in Spain. It's across the board, not only in Europe, but also in the US. If you look at the macro data, I mean, funds, venture capital has retreated in large funds, in large rounds. So it's a problem common across the board. Now, the big guys will be in the US would be investing mainly in the US. They will also be investing outside. And by the way, I think Spain is a great opportunity in terms of valuation. The valuations in Spain are very, very competitive compared to the rest of Europe. So it's guys, if there's any investor here with big tickets, I think it's a great opportunity to bridge the gap, for example, between the US and Spain. But I mean, it's happening everywhere.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I know that most people attending here must be from Spain, and I want to speak a little bit more about Portugal, because Portugal, for such a small country, not that size matters, has seen tremendous growth. What do you think that Portugal can teach other players in the ecosystem?
Well, actually, we have seen a fantastic evolution in the Portuguese ecosystem in the last 10 years. Yeah. Just for you to have this information, 10 years ago, the investment in startups in Portugal, yearly investment, was about 50 million euros a year. In 2021, we reached a record high of 1.5 billion euros invested in startups in Portugal, 90% coming from foreign VC funds. So the growth is gigantic, and this has changed the way all society looks at these companies, the government, the way the government looks at them, and this is an important issue. And also because these companies are an example to others also. We have recently put up a new startup law in Portugal in 2023 that for the first time states and includes a legal definition of startup. This was a very important step. I think you guys in Spain also have a legal frame for startup. I would say that ours is a little bit more inclusive because it considers startup a company up to 10 years of age, up to 50 million a year of revenue, and up to 250 employees, and innovative and scalable. So I would suggest for a start that you would change this legal concept of startup, because currently a startup is more than a company that has only till 5 years, like or 7 years as you legislate, or 5 million euros a year of business volume. So I think that should be a little bit more inclusive. And these companies, we have about 4,000 startups that are reached by this legal frame, this legal definition in Portugal. Now we can study them because we know them, and we can know how different they are from other companies. And for instance, these companies, in the last 3 years, they have grown at an average of 25% a year. They pay to their, as comparing to 9% a year of the general economic, let's say, companies in Portugal of all sizes. These companies pay more, 60% on average, to their workers than the average economic frame of companies in Portugal. These companies export 60% of what they produce, comparing to 14% the other companies. So these are really different companies that are an example to all the economy, and they should be supported by specific initiatives and programs that are dedicated to grow their importance and their number in the economy. I would say that if we multiplied by 10 the number of these companies in Portugal, we would have a much bigger, strong company in terms of growth, in terms of productivity, in terms of commercial relationship with the exterior, and reach to the whole world. So start by studying the ecosystem. It's important to map and to know what we are talking about, and then to construct a series of initiatives that help the entrepreneurs to do their way. The main responsibles for this growth are obviously the entrepreneurs. They risk their jobs, they risk their lives, then put their efforts into this, but they need to be helped by an interesting frame. I think the inspiration can be what happened in the United States some decades ago, because they are in another level. For instance, in this that we were talking about, the capacity that they have to invest large tickets in these companies. There's a big difference between these large investors and the European ones. The American investors, they are backed by private pension funds that have big capacity to put money into venture capital. 80% of what Americans invest in venture capital comes from private venture funds. You know the number in Europe? 7 to 9%.
Wow.
So it's a big, big, big difference.
And pension funds in Europe are actually investing in funds in the States.
Yeah, so unless we change this, we will never be able to keep these high potential companies in Europe. They will fly to the United States because the investors want to invest where they feel comfortable in their legislation, so the companies will fly to Delaware. You cannot blame them because the money is there and the investors are there. So this is a European problem. It's not a Portuguese or a Spanish or a German problem. And we should change it as a whole in Europe. We are working with ESNA. ESNA is the Europe Startup Nations Alliance. And it's kind of it's an alliance of the 27 countries in Europe that wants to promote an easier environment for startups in whole Europe. So this is a big task for ESNA to implement and to change, because we have to fill this gap.
I completely agree. Although not everything is doom and gloom in Europe, specifically in Spain, because we've seen the work that Startups Valencia has been doing. And I want to ask you more or less the same question. What did you guys do to foster this environment when you had to build it from scratch?
Yes, we have we have more than 1,000 startups now in Valencia. We know them very well, and we know their needs. And now it's easier for us to help them to the next steps. No? Maybe we are an early stage ecosystem now, and the needs are like more to be more international, and we are helping them to go abroad in order to know new investors in other countries, to know maybe some customers in other countries, in order to have different headquarters in maybe in US, why not, in LATAM, of course, and also in some points of Europe. And with these needs, we can go also with the public side to work with them and try to explain it, because it's really difficult for the public employers and also for the politicians how to understand what is happening and how are these startups are working now, because it's really different than how the traditional side, no? So the needs are different, and maybe we are like facilitators, and we are in the middle and helping how to translate these languages, no? The startup language and the traditional language, and also the public language. And now we have helped to the government of Spain to develop the new legal frame for the startups, the startup ecosystem now in Spain. It's only one point it's the first step, but it isn't enough. For us, we are happy to have this, but we need to develop and to learn about our neighbors and the success stories from Portugal, from Germany, UK, or other countries, France also. And yes, we think that we can, if people like us, or like Startup Portugal, are in these ecosystems helping to translate these this kind of needs, it will be easier to develop and to grow the ecosystem. Also, we are in a really global competition with the talent. No? We have really good talent in Spain, very competitive in costs, very competitive in quality of life, of course, security, fun, everything. No? We have all these things, and we have to put it in value, because now digital nomads around the world, founders looking for a new location, and why not to think in Spain to come here. So we are now working hard in attract this talent, these right founders, these right projects, these right corporates also, and with alliance with another kind of associations or governments in order to move the startups. Because we know that for our ecosystem it's very important to go abroad or startups, but also it's very important to attract the right startups or the right projects to Spain and of course to Valencia. So yes, we think there are many factors, but this is some of them.
Yeah.
Can I add something to both your points? When you talked about Europe, and by the way, I'm amazed by what you've been doing in Portugal over the last 10 years. The founders are amazing, the companies are impressive, and I think that one of the key elements of the success of Portugal, with comparatively speaking is much bigger than any other ecosystem, is the size of the country. The market size. I mean, when you started talking about the importance of customers, but we haven't talked about customers. So if you have a small market, I mean, you have no options but to build your company to be an international company.
Right.
In Spain, we have this trap of a mid-sized market. You have the temptation to serve a 45, 47 million market. And then when you go abroad, you realize how hard it is to become international. That's one of the big issues. I mean, a company that is created in California can sell in California, can sell in Texas, in New York, wherever, and there's mainly no difference. A company created in Lisbon or in Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, I mean, when they go and sell in Paris or they go and sell in Milan, there is a huge gap in terms of labor regulation, in terms of other sort of regulation. So I
Also
think
the culture shock.
culture shock. I mean, it's a different countries in the end.
Yep.
So I think we need more. Less barriers. We need to work together more as European countries to be able, if we want to compete with the US and with China as well.
I would love to add something because I totally agree with what you said both. I think we fortunately are countries that can provide some good quality of life, good work-life balance. We have natural conditions that position ourselves in a good spot, in a good place comparing to others. But currently, we need to have more business arguments on the table. This is not enough. And entrepreneurs and founders, they make their decisions rationally. They compare data. They more and more compare the advantages at the end of the day to the P&Ls of their businesses. So for instance, in Portugal, what we put in place after the new startup law were concrete advantages for founders. And this ends up always coming to taxes and to regulation, and because this is a pain for them. And they compare, we are in a competition. So for instance, in Portugal, we have the most competitive tax regime for stock options in Europe. This means that an employee that benefits from stock options will pay a tax rate of only 14%, 1/4, at the liquidity moment. This compares with 30% in the UK, with 40% in France, and with 20% in Spain or more, I think. And some countries also charge in the vesting moment, which is the initial moment, and not only in liquidity. So you have to differentiate yourself with specific arguments like this. Another one, if you employ in a Portuguese startup a foreigner that has lived abroad for the last 5 years, this guy will pay only a tax rate, IRS, of 20% during 10 years if he's an employee of a startup. This is very interesting. This makes a difference in attracting and retaining talent. The IRC for startups, the income tax for companies, specifically for startups in Portugal, is 12.5%. So you have to put real arguments on the table, because the sunshine and all that is really good. I think it's an argument. But if you don't have really business arguments that go to the P&L and to the bottom line, you won't be able to do it.
Antonio, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to sell everything and move to Portugal tomorrow.
Yeah, do it.
Right away. Regarding what you were saying about, having better business arguments and a more data-driven environment, I do think that Juan has something to say about it, because you have a bunch of data in regards to the Spanish ecosystem as well, right?
Well, yes. I mean, as I said before, it's a very healthy ecosystem in the very early phases, up to, again, Series BC. So I think there are big opportunities. If you want to start a company in Spain today, you have lots of funds, competition, reasonable valuations as well, a healthy and vibrant ecosystem of agents that are connecting the dots and bringing people together. So overall, I think it's a good ecosystem to be, and the only way is up today. So because all the venture capital has gone down significantly, I think we are now catching up. The latest data we have is very promising. We've seen more mega rounds slowly showing up, and we hope this continues to be the trend.
Yeah, but Antonio already said his piece in this regard, but is there something that you would change of the Spanish ecosystem? Be it regulation, be it anything beyond what you just said about having mega rounds?
Well, I think there's also customers. I mean, corporates are paying more and more attention to, and I'm talking to B2B companies, obviously, to startups. There is more and more interest in running open innovation entities within each large corporation. They want to work with startups because they are doing very innovative things at much faster speed than what they do inside. So there is interest, and there's also investment. So it's not just an interest, it's a reality. Corporates are investing much more in Spain as well.
I'm going to throw the same question to Nacho. Nacho, I'm going to put you in a tight spot. Is there anything that you will change about the Spanish ecosystem, that you think this is the primary challenge that we need to face in the years ahead?
Yes, like Antonio said, is the law, no? Because our law now is really early stage law, so we need to develop it in business keys, no? And maybe the challenge is about taxes, the challenge is about the visa of the people who work here, because it's really difficult now for the startups to attract this talent from US or from maybe many countries of Latin or Asia maybe. And yes, and we are working hard in it. It's really difficult now because we have the environment now in the politician is really unstable, no? So it's really difficult now. But we are trying to do it, and we know that we will have a success this, but we don't know when, no? Maybe we hope earlier than 1 year, 2 years ago, but it's really difficult. And meanwhile, we are working with corporates in order to have corporate innovation programs, open innovation, because also we haven't yet here the large VCs, no, really. So now we have here the talent, entrepreneurs, the corporates, most of them helping us, and the VCs, but in the early stage only. So we have to profit this ecosystem and to develop and to grow, and yes, and looking for the success stories like Portugal.
Yeah. Well, we ran out of time. I think that we can leave it at that. Basically, we need money. So if you have a few billions laying around, please pour them into the Mediterranean. Thank you so much.
Thank you.